We right to it.
What's up,
Dude,
man?
when I tell you, there are very few people that when I first met them, I knew without unforeseen circumstances, this person's going to be around in my life for a grip. Uh, when we met, your the way you think was very challenging, very alluring. I've really grown to appreciate your perspective, so I'm super excited to just go gym hunting. Uh, I'm an innovative dad. I love to be at the forefront of what's available. And when I was exposed to the Student Success Agency, my mouth hit the floor, bro. When I really saw what you were doing by way of impact, I was very impressed. So I just want to be able to make sure everybody knows what
Absolutely.
is SSA. Clarify it in terms so teachers, educators, moms, the community knows what is available. And then I want to maybe get into some of your why you started it. What problem were you really solving with the launch of
Absolutely.
SSA? So the floor is yours.
Yeah. One, the feeling is mutual. Like connecting with you, I was like, this guy's the real deal. So feelings mutual, by the way. So Student Success Agency. Student Success Agency's mission is to help reimagine student support services in a digital world. Before Student Success Agency, school districts only provided support services during the day when kids are in class. That would be like the grocery store only open when teachers are at work. Kids need these resources, and it's oftentimes outside of school. Data shows that out of school barriers impact in school success. So, why would we not support kids when we actually need them most? But that's because school and a lot of things that we exist on was developed before the internet. And so people had to only focus on 9 to 5 strategies to
Mm-hmm.
support students. But that's very inequitable to expect
Yep.
all kids can stay after school, come to school early, skip lunch.
Mm.
So we're helping school districts build more equitable schools by providing support anywhere, anytime. Now, that's the way we get the educator. Now, for the students, Student Success Agency is the first agency to represent students instead of celebrities and athletes. We say if LeBron James can have an agent,
Mm.
Beyonce can have an agent, why can every teenager have their own agent? So what we do is we
I can't just, bro. That's sexy, boy. That is a pitch. Oh, my bad. I'm gonna let you get back to it, but
no,
that's
yeah,
succinct.
and exactly because here's the kicker. It's because I remember being a first generation at risk. Something's wrong with this kid, and a mentor would show up to my lunch to hang out with me in third grade, and it meant that something was wrong with me. But
Mm.
an agent means you're valuable.
Mm.
And I think ultimately, when we look at risk students and at risk communities, the first up contract is we got to start investing into them
Mm-hmm.
the same way we invest in at risk startups.
Yep.
Why does high
Yep.
risk startups get billions of
Yep.
dollars, but we question that with high risk students?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you get one, the same way you get a Facebook or an Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
it can change
Great
communities.
perspective.
And so to me, it's starting to teach kids to have that belief in themselves and schools to realize how we perceive and our services was really big. So every kid gets their own agent, and within the app of how we support kids digitally, you have the role of an agent
Mm-hmm.
who plays as a near peer who's really helping the kid develop their perspective, their confidence, who they are, and just know they have a confidant who's there to help them figure out whatever they need. But they can then connect them to an array of services like academic tutoring, college advising, career exploration. So they have access to sessions within the app where the agent can help them schedule time with experts. I want to
Mm-hmm.
have time with of someone who played sports in college. I can talk to that person.
Mm-hmm.
I need help with my physics test that I'm about to take. I can schedule that on my time.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is we're meeting kids between the times. So we're meeting them on the bus. We're meeting them when they're waiting for their mom to pick them up. We're meeting them as they're waiting for their shift to start at the mall.
Mm-hmm.
And when you add that time and give it back to the school district, it equates to a whole school year of time.
Mm-hmm.
So simply by meeting kids where they are and doing things outside of school, we're supporting kids one-on-one the same amount of time as school operates every single year.
Mm.
And so that is the power of time, right? And so that's the power. And now we're doing this in 23 states, over 400 schools across the country, really helping build support services anywhere, anytime. And why this is so passionate for me is I believe it's one of those things where we're democratizing where you were born,
Mm.
because now every kid can have this kind of infrastructure, and you're not relying that hopefully he was, born into TC's household or Rodney's household. right?
It's facts.
So that's what makes me really passionate about it.
There's a lot I can double click on. My heart immediately went to my kids are young now, but I imagine as they are in high school, I'm very intentional about who invests in them, who you're around, right? Good relationships. So can you speak to, you spoke about your agents. What's that vetting process look like? The talent that's being brought in what's that look like for you? Because I know that's something parents who are really concerned will really think through that. What's that look like for you?
Every strategy in SSA has an aspiration. And this aspiration is we're trying to build the best part-time job for college students. And so these are near-peer college students who oftentimes are looking for a job and a program that allows them to not just gain experience, but something they're proud enough to put on their resume and shows that they're helping them build their executive leadership or their own brand. And so we have a 2-year program that allows college students to go through our Agent Changemaker Institute, learn the craft on how to connect with students. And so we go through background checks, they go through multiple interviews, they learn how to text and engage students because we look for people who can connect with someone they'll never meet in person. Think about the power of and the uniqueness of a new connection where someone is meeting with another person, supporting them, but they've never met in person, and then caring about one each other. I would say it would be like our parents' pen pal in a way, but through a mentorship model. And so our agents, we look for those things. And last year we had 8,000 people apply for 80 positions. That's 1%.
Wow.
So I tell the students, it's harder to be your agent than it is for you to get into Harvard.
The data suggests. That's really dope, man. That's really dope. And you've been doing this for how long?
We started in May of 2012.
May of 2012.
Skype was cool.
Wow. This is also predating a lot of the technologies that right now we can't even really fathom life without. And I want to double click on, I'm going to come back to some of the challenges you've had with SSA, with integrating such a cutting edge solution to traditional models. But you were an entrepreneur before it was this sexy, trendy, look at me, I'm starting my business with no clients. Tell me go back to that launch. What was some of those early entrepreneurial season like for you?
Yeah, no, I got really blessed when I was like, I graduated with a journalism degree, but I got a minor in entrepreneurship. My first entrepreneurial hustle was I wanted to be a motivational speaker. So I became one of the top youth speakers in the country, which got me into schools. So I was going into hundreds of schools, meeting with counselors, hearing their problems, seeing the challenges of the day, just to get a speaker there. It's like, man, if getting an hour of me that you paid a lot of money to be here is this hard, what is it like for these tutors who are trying to get sessions with kids? And what is it time with these counselors who are trying to get time with the kids? And so it was just realizing, man, we really got to take when kids get inspired or want to continue their learning, how do we do that when the bell rings? And so all of it started there. And so the entrepreneurial inside me part, one of my first clients as a speaker was the Extreme Entrepreneurship Tour, which was basically a bus that went around to colleges. And I actually think they're one of the pivotal parts that made entrepreneurship cool, because they were teaching entrepreneurship before you can even major in it. And they were taking a bus and bringing some of the top entrepreneurs under the age of 30 who've sold companies for over $1 million. But what they noticed is when they brought them to the colleges, they didn't know how to speak. They were boring. These were like tech guys, right? So it's like they found a YouTube video of me speaking and says, would you be interested in emceeing? So now I, as a 21, 22-year-old kid who was just trying to be the next Tony Robbins, ended up staying in hotels and dinners with a guy who just sold a company for $125 million.
It's dope.
And I'm like, he's really not that different than me. And I feel like, so that's when I started ideating. I'm like, what am I if I wasn't a speaker? So I would not be able to have thought of SSA without being around some of the best young entrepreneurs ever do it.
It's phenomenal. Your sense of self to be in those spaces. Imposter syndrome, did you ever have any of those moments? Like, or were you always sure, like?
No, I definitely had imposter syndrome in the sense of a book I read, Delivering on Happiness. It talks about know your poker table, right? You're gonna mainly lose if you're at a poker table where everyone else is better than you at poker. They're faster with numbers. They're more they're wittier, they're intelligent. And I know as an average kid who didn't graduate in the top 25%, I didn't take no AB, IB. I was an average kid in the middle. I actually got a journalism degree because I asked my college advisor, what's the degree I can get without taking a math class? And she said a journalism. I was like, sign me up. And so I just knew. So I just knew like my game. And so what I saw is that like even though we were going to colleges and they were the ones who had the big businesses, all the kids were hanging out with me wanting to have the line. And so I realized what I do at SSA is that it's not the most technical. We use humans to talk to kids, but we're the most engaging. I'm taking exactly what I did on stage to make people hire me to speak to their school on tech platforms. Your tech platform, what it lacks is people using it. And so we take what we understand on the psychology of student engagement from a physical level, and now are doing that at a digital level and almost kind of giving these mini motivational speakers that we call agents to kids to inspire, connect, laugh. And that connection allows people to really believe in our product and what we service.
There are superintendents and directors, there are principals, teachers, and then there are students. So they like 3 layers, if you will, of adoption. And so you starting from 2012, it's approaching 2024, 2025 and beyond. What have been some of the biggest hurdles by way of this product being fully understood and then ultimately received, integrated?
Yeah.
Can you speak to some of those challenges you faced?
This is why I would say I'm actually a really bad entrepreneur. And this is some of my advice to anyone who wants to be a future maker or change the world, is that the decision you have to decide, am I making something that makes me money so that I can, sip pina coladas and enjoy my passive life? Or are you going to do what's hard because you have something to do, right? I think Elon Musk does this all the time with his dream was to make humans a multiplanetary species. That's not a business idea. That's a purpose. And so for me, like, that's what makes SSA so hard, is that I'm selling something they didn't even know existed, that they wanted, or don't even are questioning, do I actually need to be spending the money on this? And not only are we doing that, we're asking some of the most marginalized communities and underfunded school districts to somehow find space and to believe in it. So we, first have to be a hope dealer and showing them the possibilities of there's another way to do this with less money. And I believe by us building digital infrastructure for physical infrastructures like schools, we're now to help their kids more in a cost-effective, scalable way. Our solution costs the same price as one salaried employee. And I could put a human in every kid's pocket, anywhere, anytime, after school, on the weekends, and create a whole school year of time. How much does a school cost to run? Millions of dollars. And we did that with one paid employee's salary.
That's what's up.
And so it takes the politics now, like, okay, I'm a believer, but now is that believer the person who can actually get their boss to believe? And wait, superintendent shift. So you have to constantly be okay with playing the long game, decades instead of days. For me there, I recently I did a keynote called The Great Recalibration. Only 11 of the 70 superintendents from the largest urban school areas have been there since 2020. So that means there's so much new vision being discussed, which is why I think our product is actually perfect right now, because now there's these fresh, new superintendents who want to make a splash. What is my imprint on this community and district? We're able to hit that aspiration and say, well, look at this. You talk about how a mentor changed your life. Well, have you ever heard of us? So it's understanding their story and what they're trying to make an impression and make the solution, not that it's yours, but like we're just helping them design, their digital infrastructure that complements that physical school day.
Do you have competitors?
I would say, yeah. I mean, because everyone kind of competes for funding, even if like they don't do anything like what SSA does, which I won't say we have direct competitors. We do have, which also, the note is a sign of a bad business. Let's be clear. When VCs, if an investor is asked, do you have any competitors, and you say you don't, that is a sign that you're not aware of the macroeconomics, and it's a fear that they're saying, well, then maybe this won't work. You just gave me a concern because you're trying to do something too original, right? And so if you're going to do something original of set on purpose, you're going to spend 5 times more effort to get as far as a SaaS business that created something to make this one widget that was a PDF into a PNG that allowed them to invoice for a bank, right? Like, but they probably need that. And that's a good business if you can build that business. But the business that I'm trying to create is a legacy design business. And what I call legacy design is I'm really big on changing the world, right? It sounds really corny, but the thing I think about on a regular basis is how much impact can I make on this world in my short 100 years on this earth? And so I don't believe in legacy in the sense of you ever remembering my name. I believe in legacy in the sense of legacy design. How do I make the future evolve and design new systems so that when I'm dead, the world operates better? No one knows who invented the toilet. No one knows who invented the stoplight. But we are better because of those people who worked on those systems. And so I believe right now, if only 1% of society is actually legacy designing every day, if we could get that to 2%, 3%, imagine where we would be. Imagine what kind of things we would already have. Obviously, we're living through a very disruptive time right now, but I'm almost upset at what could have you and I could have had earlier if there was more ambition and legacy designers created before us.
That's real.
And it's like your and I's only ability on how long we live, on where we go, is based on the aspirations of the people before us. So the future is only as bright as the ambition of the present.
You travel dozens of states annually. You've been doing this decade plus. You've been knee to knee with students more than most, right? Parents generally have their kids, maybe their friends' kids, but rather removed from the day-to-day real realities of students. So we've had some like common readings, like the anxious generation, studying this distinction between play-based childhood, phone-based childhood. And he calls out 2012 around that time where the popularization of the smartphone in hands of students radically changed. And so you've been in those trenches over this time where most people haven't. So when they think young people, they immediately think of how life was for them. What are some of the misconceptions you see? Or like if you were trying to clarify for parents, this is the life of a teenager today. What are some of the things you see?
One, Jonathan Haidt's book is probably the most transformational book of 2024. There's some good ones that I would say that I prefer better, but in a sense of policy and what it's going to do for people in schools, it's definitely going to make a movement. By 2026, 23, maybe even majority of states will have phone bans. And so, one, powerful to be a writer to be able to make something like that. And I think most of what he says is 100% what needs to happen. No phones before 13, no social media before 16, no phones in a learning environment. So if class is going on, there's no phones. That all makes sense to me. However, when they leave and they're not in schools, they're in their phones the same length and time as they are in school. This is the first generation that lives with 3 lives: their personal life, their professional life, and their phone life. And so they're the first generation to ever do that. And so we have to prepare them for that third life. And so I always say, I look back at history and look back when we got cars, right? When the data on teenagers in a car together is not good. But what did we do? We taught them how to drive on physical highways at 70 miles an hour. We gave them driver's ed courses. We certified them with licenses. And then what was able to happen, kids were able to go to work and help their parents. Because we didn't get afraid of this new 70-mile driving metal, and said, we're banning these from you showing up to school in a car. I think the same thing just has to happen for the phone. We need to provide them a license to drive the information highway. We need to help them learn and understand the safeties and what they can do with the settings on their devices. Let them understand the algorithms and the distractions and get them to control that knowledge stack where we then trust them on the road. It's, to me, what just is having to happen. And if we don't do that, we could be creating a bunch of kids who lose to other societies that invested in building phone education.
My children go to a school where they were given a one-to-one device. So do you even need a phone? Do you feel like that's a necessity?
Going back to our conversation we just had, when you look at history, research showed that kids needed a device, an electronic device attached to the internet. And so they put in policy one-to-one devices and computers and started funding that. But that bill and those things that got passed happened right when the iPhone was created. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is our society spent billions of dollars to give kids computers when they were actually phone-based generation. Mm-hmm. And so this is an example of how we think that what research is telling us is what we need to do. But the behaviors of future could really change where the economy is going. And so when the phone showed up, the state was scaling desktops, mm-hmm. and they missed on this phone revolution. What we have to understand is that we're on iOS 18. That means the smartphone, the iPhone, has been here for 18 years. It is a senior in high school applying to college. This generation doesn't know life before the iPhone. This is their existence, their reality. And the generation that's coming next won't know life before ChatGPT.
I connect with building the future, being a part of going into the unknown and just figuring it out, using human ingenuity and creative problem solving and just being on the front edge of that. If you're need with students or even adults who have to pivot, what are some essential skills that you think people should be developing in the midst of this huge technology transition?
That's a great question. And I think that's the thing I'm thinking about the most. And I imagine you as a father, you're thinking about that all the time too. It's like, what do I say to my kids and how do I prepare them for what they're about to walk into that we don't know? Understand it's 2024, 1924, 100 years ago, women were fighting for the right to vote. They just passed, 1922, women's right to vote, right? The World War I just finished, 1918. 16 million people died. The same amount of kids in high school. 16 million people died.
Wow.
How do you explain to a World War I vet what TikTok is?
Good luck.
And this next 100 years is going to be way more exponential than that. Right. So when I look at 2124, what could be the possible things that are happening? Definitely, we have to teach kids how to communicate with other consciousnesses, digital consciousnesses, like chat, like learning language models or robots that are serving their households or whatever those things are going to be. There's going to be other things they have to care about and how to decide to collaborate with and not just see human intelligence as what's going to make us. And in fact, we will be superior to other intelligence. But it's the same way where a crane is stronger than us. We tapped out and said, crane, you do the heavy lifting.
Okay.
So the robots will do the heavy information. They will be
superior to us.
To us, exactly,
to
the heavy information. Like, we are no longer the make things efficient, make things more productive, optimize this. Mm-hmm. The robot will do that. Mm-hmm. So my advice to parents and to schools is we have to work on teaching the kids about what it means to just simply be human. No matter what technology comes, no matter what world we live in, humans will always want to connect with humans. And if you can create experiences, communities, and connections, not just connecting with humans in physical areas and spaces, but also in digital spaces, right? Look at your profession with VR, right? Teaching kids how to, and adults, how to communicate and build capacity and take control of your life in digital arenas. Real. And so those things to me is like what is going to be vital. That human connection is going to be so important. I look at my best friend. I just came back from LA to see my best friend. And I said to him, if someone gave you $1 million, but you could never see me again, would you take it? He immediately said no. The asset of a friendship with another human is worth millions today. So when AI and everything shows up, it's going to be worth a lot.
That's a bold question. You can get your feelings hurt real quick. You ask your friend, and your friend be like, "Give me the bag."
Yeah, but I think but But what I am is a superior human.
That's right.
I'm learning of how to be as good as I can with the rawness of who I am, and I never take any of consuming of books, consuming of knowledge, being interesting, being enthusiastic for life. Yeah, some of this has come natural, but I am maniacal on every interaction with the person because those are rich moments to make an impression and be interesting. And in a world where life is becoming less interesting, I think the physical world is actually becoming more humanless than the digital world. Think about every interaction you happen that is fast. When the Amazon guy comes and drops off the box, he has headphones in. When I go order the coffee, the girl has headphone in. If I have an issue at the airline, fast connections are dying. The way fast food, fast fashion, fast connection, the machine has taken that all over, and we're no longer relying on human connection. So what happens next when there's no more Uber driver? The hours upon hours of conversations humans were having together that no longer there because now you're driving in a Waymo. So lack of human connection, the asset of having that is going to be worth millions, and you don't have to be EJ. Because we're also not having as many kids. These connections are why all what we do at SSA is important. We're not trying to optimize for robots talking to kids. We're trying to let kids know that we can scale human care, and actually you matter to all of us. And we can build a future where even with all these intelligent beings, we will still matter regardless of how this works. I am in fear, though, we might be house cats to these things. And I hope Sam Altman and Elon Musk and all these people who are designing the future at least treat us like house cats. Allow us to live, allow us to have food, allow us to interact with each other. Those are some of my biggest fears. How many people will actually play king or God or superior to all of us? But regardless, the same way we don't really control a lot of our economics today as average people, those things matter most is the humans who unconditionally love you. When you ask someone who unconditionally love you, name as many people who unconditionally love you. I'm pretty confident most people can't do over 5 people. Mom, dad, brother, sister, wife, right? Like unconditionally. If you're broke, if you're never succeeded. And that's to me, I'm focused on how do I get that number to 10 and spend 80% of my energy on those 10. And those are the things that matter when it comes to those assets that we won't have in the digital. And that's why I think there's a lot of loneliness and a lot of people just relying on bots and emotion from the algorithm to live their life.
House cats? That's a very grim outlook. Expect, like, if that's what you believe our existence will come to. So do you really believe that is where we are headed? And are there other things that are on your purview, like, man, this could get really grim?
I mean, I would argue outside of work, me and my dog relatively lives very similar lives. We wake up, he has a drink of water, I have a drink of water. He looks out the window, I look at the TV or my phone. I then have to go serve, to go work, to be productive. The dog used to have to, right? They used to have a Rottweiler. They used to have to cut their tails and tie them up to a wagon, and he also had to work. So, not useful anymore, but I love him. I don't necessarily know if that's actually off already for a lot of us. And so and I'm not saying that in a necessarily bad way. Like, I don't think, like, I think we're also living through a society where is production, power, capitalism. I think Gen Zers and younger people are realizing, like, this game is becoming harder to hack. It's becoming harder to defeat. Mm-hmm. So let me enjoy being a house cat with the people I care about. And I think the opportunity that we see at Student Success Agency is, even though the power might become more and more concentrated among 5 companies or whatever the case might happen, we're still going to want to operate. Like, my dog would love to be on an SSA in the digital world talking to other dogs, being in friends, but doesn't have the ability. But we are going to be able to do that for humans, to care online about each other. Regardless what happens in all this world, I can't control that. That's not my poker table. I'm not making a bet because that's not my poker table. I am not going to build the next ChatGPT. I'm not going to build the next thing that as prolific as the iPhone.
Hmm.
But what I am good at is human connection. I've always been. It's my survival instinct. It's how I got paid on stage, to how I got paid to connect schools. And so I'm going to continue to be like, I know for a fact humans mattering with humans will matter 100 years from now.
Mm-hmm. That's real.
So that's what the thing I know and I'm willing to bet on.
As you were describing that, I'm thinking of who is the one that we are in subjection to, and I'm thinking of just the rise of humanoid robotics that are equipped with this artificial intelligence that just is far superior than humans. That's one bet that, as I look at when you brought up motor vehicles, there just was a time where it was horses only, and then what's this new thing that radically changed how we move and get places, and now every family has a couple. People collect multiple.
Yeah.
A lot of trends at these robotic machines being at a price point equivalent to vehicles. I can't really fathom a world yet, though I know I would bet that it is coming, where there are as many humanoid robots, if not more, than there are humans. What do you think about that reality? Are you betting the same on that?
I guess to me, the second bet outside of humans will matter more in the future. There will be more consciousness in the future. We won't be the superior conscious anymore, and the only conscious we worry about. There will be what some scientists say homo technologist, which is a homo sapien who then gets connected to technology, like a Neuralink that is able to expand their ability outside of people who choose not to do that. Mm-hmm. That's going to be an interesting time in history. Then what you're talking about is these homo roboticus, these humanoid robots that act human and can have some type of intelligence, but we kind of matter. Like, right, you see an old man with his car who waxes it and makes sure it's nice and clean. So we're going to have some responsibilities. Maybe, right, there'll be insurance for these things. There might be some emission fees, charging stations. So it's going to be like a car that we build policy for, but at the same time, intelligent. This is the first time where the car is actually smarter than you, not just faster than you. Mm-hmm. So humans who decide to connect to a system, and then bots that are smarter than you now have to learn a teamwork that's not just people now. Mm-hmm. And that is the second thing that's definitely we got to prepare our kids for. If this this is my POV. I'm operating off of this POV today, based off of what I read, how I'm moving as a tech leader, and the reason why I got so obsessed with this is literally when ChatGPT hit, 100 million people used it in 2 months. That took Netflix 18 years to get to 100 million users. So the speed of technology is changing so quickly, and so I immediately got text messages from everyone. What does this do for your business? Why would you have human agents when you have AI agents? Chats. And I'm like, And something I'm willing to say is, I do not know. And so I went all in on reading AI. I went all in on hearing what the smartest people have to say, watching YouTube videos. And I'm just connecting the same chips of okay, what matters to me, right? I don't own a car, which is funny that you use the car analogy. I don't own a car because, again, I try to I am so obsessed on caring about humans and changing our lives that I try to invest in the things that allows me to be free to do that. So me and my wife share a car. We share one car, but we decided that because it gives us more income to go out to eat with our friends, maybe foot the bill, right? Or being able to invest more on the experiences and the connections. And so those are things that how I live my life is, I think how I would rather have a smaller house with more cash to do more real experiences, real engagements. Those are the things that I am trying to do. We're a company, right? We're one of the fastest growing companies, Inc. 5000, 2 years in a row.
Hey.
But we did that with no ever physical space. We've never signed a lease. Ever. Signed a lease to a building. Isn't that crazy? Some of our people I've meet once a year in person. And so as SSA and what we do is we're trying to show that these physical institutions, are they, what's really important is not the physical infrastructure or the digital infrastructure. What's really important is where you and I are connecting.
Yep.
And is that going well or not? Human connection. And so those are the things that I try to pit myself around and acknowledge the most important part is us four in this room right now, working together, being together.
On the Future Maker podcast, one thing we ask, the final question to every guest is, what's something that scares you?
I would say the thing that scares me is the human's inability to understand what is real. We are where we are today because we're great at telling stories, right? Like we can, at billions of people, can say, put lines in the sand, make a piece of paper and say, that's his property, that's your property, this is my property. And then say, this is true. But we just created that value, right? And a lot of what I'm afraid of is we're going through a weird time where what is real? And so I'm afraid of like who gets exploited on that. And I'm also afraid of us never getting over our own bias of the mythology and imagination that we've created of how we think the world works, and just getting honest with what is for certain real, and then invest in those things. And if we choose to be ignorant and not see those things, we're just going to be controlled by those who invested in that. And that to me is sad, because I think America, where we live, and I'm a proud American, is already our kids don't participate in building real things. They want to be TikTok influencers, not build the next TikTok. Right? They want to be the football player, not Roger Goodell, who's the commissioner of the league, who just created a game that everyone spends billions of dollars and creates stadiums for. But is football actually real? It could be changed. It could literally change. We could change it to a different number one sport in America. So how can we get more people to understand what is real power? And we got to get our kids and our kids in schools to understand and learn that really quickly.
It's real. Wow. That's a powerful landing, dude.
Cut.